So I'm going to get started. First of all, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about who I am and why I like to talk about sleep. My name is Heather Cake, as you can see, and I've been a psychologist at the IWK for, well, it just turned 22 years, starting September 4th. And I worked the majority of my career in a program that followed up children born very prematurely. And we would follow those children for a period of about 3 years. But sometimes the parents would call after that time period. One of the issues that consistently came up was sleep. Parents wanting a nice sleep period. You know, you have an evening to yourself. You can have adult conversation with your partner. You can put the baby to bed and walk away. And what I realized that these are novel concepts in the lives of most parents who spend, many, many hours sometimes getting their child to sleep. They don't know how to get their child to sleep. There's more opinions than not about how to get your child to sleep. If you go to the bookstore, you can see, 5 books with 5 different opinions. You go on the internet and you can get 20 different opinions. And you can usually find an opinion that matches really what you want to do or what you're not prepared to do. So I learned over the years about, I kind of learned the technical aspects of sleep and how to get children to sleep. But what I learned most of all was the impact on parents when their children are not sleeping through the night. And what a lot of the books on sleep don't talk about is the impact on the relationship between the partners when the baby, well, not so much the baby, but when the infant and toddler and preschooler are not sleeping through the night. So they're usually, are they in mom and dad's bed? Are they, are mom and dad camped out on the living room floor with the kids? And yes, I've had that happen. And the relationship between the partners suffers. And I don't, and you need a good, strong, firm base together to raise a child, in my opinion. And when you're all 3 of you or 4 of you or 5 of you sleep deprived, it just doesn't work. But in recognizing that, I also recognize in terms of when it came to modifying sleep, I learned that, I guess one of the biggest lessons I learned is that parents have to be ready. So I used to ride in on my white horse and say, I can save the day. I can get your child to sleep through the night. I can do this and I can do that. And here's how you do it. This is what I'll do, da-da-da-da-da. And then they'd come back a couple months later. Well, no, Heather, no. And what I realized is that both any adults that are in the house need to be on board when it comes to sleep modification. Because if there's a weak link in the house, you're not going to have success. Because if you have a child crying for 2 or 3 hours and you're sleep modifying, and finally, the mom or the dad says, oh, fine, I got to go get them, then you're starting all over again. So both parents have to be ready. And that's the biggest lesson I've learned over time. So I thought tonight, this is part of a whole series of lectures that the psychologists give. And so this one is entitled Sleep in the Infant, Toddler, and Preschooler. So I'd like to welcome you all here and welcome all the sites that are available through telehealth. I think it would be best if we save the questions to the end. The presentation itself isn't that long, unless I ad-lib, which is a distinct possibility. But I'm hoping to have lots of time for questions at the end. Once you get all the information, and then I can fine-tune it and try to address most of your questions. So what I'm going to do tonight is, pardon? Is that somewhere? Is go over some sleep facts, sleep patterns in the infant, toddler, and preschooler, how to promote good sleep habits, nightmares and night terrors, help, I'm not getting any sleep, and then the question and answer period. So I'm going to do some technical stuff first, so please forgive me, but when you're reading sleep books, you'll get used to some of this terminology. The terminology itself doesn't change so much. How you modify the sleep does change a lot depending on which approach you decide to take. So sleep on says the time when the state of wakefulness changes to sleepiness, usually by entering non-REM stage 1 sleep. So this is when, if you have a small infant, they're kind of getting drowsy, they're not quite awake, they're kind of half awake, and they're kind of just restless, and they're stirring, and they're kind of nodding off. They're certainly not in that beautiful, quiet, alert state, which is that really nice state. So that's kind of sleep onset. For the wee little ones, these are beginning your prime opportunity to start establishing good sleep habits and recognizing, he's getting drowsy, I should be doing something different. Sleep period from sleep onset to full and enduring arousal. So it goes right from the time that the kids are kind of getting drowsy to the time that they're waking up. Becoming fully alert to the environment and capable of clear thinking and recall. As with adults, this varies across children. And some kids are not morning children, and so they may be, kind of halfway through Sesame Street, 11 o'clock, kind of before they're kind of fully awake and functioning. Other kids, they hit the road running at 6 o'clock in the morning. Miss Lily, the young lady in this picture, she was more of a 7 o'clock, here I am, deal with me, and I want to be entertained. And her sister was kind of the exact opposite. Bedtime, time when purposeful, wakeful activity ends. For the day, sleep conditions are established and sleep onset is expected to follow. So this is when, you're starting your bedtime routines, right? So supper's over, the TV's going off, the leapfrogs are going off, the iPads are going off, all of those things are stopping. You might have a nice bedtime bath, stories, jammies, all of those things. So there's lots of cues as bedtime is a time to kind of start introducing cues for your child or baby or toddler that bedtime is coming. And they may protest, but nonetheless, we carry on. Sleep hygiene, habits required for falling and staying asleep. So sleep hygiene, I look at a child at any age being able to go to sleep on their own. So that is, mommy or daddy can put the baby in the crib or in the bed, say, good night, darling, and off they go. And so you're not lying in the bed with them, you're not sitting in the chair beside the bed and inching your way outside of the room. You're not doing, 5 episodes of Goodnight Moon, followed by a tap dance, followed by, 3 episodes of Caillou and, a fancy song. No. Sleep hygiene, simple bedtime routine, being able to put the baby to bed, awake, and having them sleep through the night. It does happen. Stages of sleep and sleep cycles. There are 2 basic types of sleep, REM and non-REM. So REM is basically, you don't have to worry about this, but active sleep when dreams take place, and non-REM is quiet sleep, which is divided into kind of 4 stages. Stage 1, this is a brief period, up to 5 minutes of transition from drowsiness to sleep. The brain activity is slowing down, the eyelids close, but they're easily awakened. So can you put your baby to bed at this phase? Of course. They may, some parents, they think, well, I have to wait until they sound asleep before I can even touch the crib. No. This is the time to start introducing the crib. I am a firm believer that the crib is not a toy box. I've had many, many parents come to me whose child has never seen the crib as a sleep position. It's filled with toys because they never do the sleep hygiene and everything else. So introducing your child to the crib at this point is good. Stage 2, light sleep lasts 10 to 45 minutes. Then stage 3, transition to deeper stage of sleep. The brain waves are slowing down and the breathing and heart rate slow. How do we find out all these things? Well, we actually, there's actually sleep labs. There's a fantastic one at Dalhousie. But actually, we can hook the kids up to electrodes and everything else and actually monitor all these things. And this is how we figured out over the years that, there are these distinct phases. Stage 4 is the deepest stage of sleep, not easily awakened. If roused, takes a few minutes to wake up. Stage 3 and 4 equals 60 minutes, and then stage 2. So these cycle all throughout the night. The key component in knowing that there's different stages of sleep is the fact that babies will wake up and fall back to sleep throughout the night. If they know how to go back to sleep on their own, they can get back to sleep on their own. But if Lucy doesn't know how to go back to sleep on their own and requires the 5 goodnight moons, the tap dance, and everything else, you're waking up throughout the night because they have no idea how to get back to sleep. Because you've tiptoed them into their crib, sound asleep, gently put the baby in, and gently leave the room so that when Lucy wakes up in the middle of the night, Lucy has no idea how to get back to sleep on her own. So that's one of the things I'm going to be talking about tonight, is really encouraging kids to learn how to go to sleep on their own. So I'm going to talk about different developmental stages for sleep because, of course, if you have a newborn, there's a 9-week-old infant in the audience, you know, they're sleeping off and on all the time, right? So, I mean, it's hard to kind of follow all of these rules, and you do expect them to wake up through the night at that age. You know, it's a rare infant that will sleep through the night at that age, but there are different developmental expectations depending on the age of the child. So how do babies sleep? Well, they go through complete cycles every 50 to 60 minutes. They can sleep any time during the day or night. By 6 weeks, you're beginning to note the daily cycles are starting to become established. Now, some of the books will recommend that you start keeping sleep charts. And, you know, so you kind of have a running dialogue or a running log of, you know, when they're getting drowsy, when they're asleep, when they're eating, and so on and so forth. Again, this is one of the things I recommended to parents when they had very small infants. And they would come back to me, Heather, do you realize what it's like to be in a household with a 6-week-old infant and you're trying to write all these things down? I said, no, not really. It's next to impossible, Heather. And so, you know, it's a nice idea, but over time you kind of get used to, okay, yeah, he likes to fall asleep around 2 p.m. and then around 6 and then around 8. You kind of get those ideas without kind of getting really sophisticated. But around 6 weeks, they do start kind of getting into some rhythms. By 4 months, the days and nights are usually straightened out, and they sleep much better than their parents. Because, you know, my experience in working with parents over these many years is that there's that anticipatory waking. You know, they go to bed at 10 o'clock, and, you know, you just breastfed, and they're sound asleep, you know, and, you know, they're oblivious to the fact that they're going to wake up in 2 hours. But it's really hard for you to get to sleep for 2 hours because you know at 1 o'clock in the morning they're going to be waking up for another feed. So it's hard for you to kind of get that sense of and so on. Realistic expectations. All infants and their parents will awake through the night. By about 6 months, 20 to 30% of infants and parents will be waking through the night. You know, I think sleep is one of those things that people like to talk about but don't want to talk about because you don't want to know what your neighbor is doing because you don't want to hear that their child is sleeping through the night and yours isn't. But, you know, it's a reality that, you know, babies are going to wake up. You know, then you just get them sleeping and then they get a tooth. And then it all starts all over again. Or then they go through, you know, kind of a developmental growth spurt, I call them. So if they're learning how to climb stairs or they're starting daycare or something, so they, you know, their brains are busy, then that can cause a little bit of kerfuffle with the sleep. So you just get things going, then kerfuffle. And, you know, and I wish there was more support around that aspect in terms of sleep. Because to me, it's critical. So sleep hygiene for the 0 to 6 month old. So watch for signs of drowsiness and put infant to bed as awake as possible. I am guilty of the next sentence. It's very tempting to hold them and cuddle them. They nestle right under your chin, you know, and they feel so good and they smell so good for the most part. And, you know, and their sleepers are nice and soft, and it's just like, oh, this is so nice. Do that for a little while, but then get them into the bassinet or into the crib. Because it's just, it's short-term pain for long-term gain. Because when they get used to those cribs, they kind of get used to that. then lo and behold, it makes it a little bit easier for you. Now, I find parents who have their second or third child, they know this, because I wish parents could have their second child first, because they, it's like, yeah, I know, I'll get to cuddle him, but really, he needs to know how to go to sleep more than I need to cuddle him. So, but I know how hard it is, because Maura, who's in the audience, knows dearly how much I love to hold babies, and it's very hard, but I do try to practice what I preach. For nighttime feeds, keep the lights very low, minimize talking, and get baby back to crib as soon as possible. Or if they're sleeping in your room, get them back to the bassinet as quickly as possible. So it's efficiency. So, if you're up watching David Letterman, no. You're just in, feed, back to bed. No lights or minimal lights and so on. So that the baby's not getting any of those cues that it's daytime. So you want to keep it really, really neutral. I don't know why. Routines for infants under 4. Yes, you can get your baby into a routine. And this is where some of those bedtime rituals begin to take place. Because, of course, they nap, periodically throughout the day, especially under 4 months or under 6 months. But if there are some distinct cues that it's bedtime, it can make it a little bit easier. Okay? So it might be a bath. It might be a particular story. I find a bath is a really good cue. Even the rubbing of the lotion on after the bath and different things like that. Kind of the softening of the lights, and they kind of get some distinct messages that this is bedtime. And but keep, as I said, keep the routine simple, and have both parents do it. So that's important as well, because you want to be able to go out and enjoy yourselves for the evening and leave your partner at home with the baby. So it's really nice if both parents can participate, so that one parent can leave and the other parent can stay, and vice versa. If you're breastfeeding, then you want to have the breastfeeding done part, but then maybe have the partner do the rest of the ritual. So again, there can be some time for both parents, because self-care is critical. Taking care of yourselves is critical. I can't underestimate the value of that. So 6 to 12 months, you may get 2 naps for a total of 3 to 4 hours of sleep during the day. If you're lucky to have one of these children that kind of sleep in cluster, like a nice hour in the morning, a nice hour and a half in the afternoon. Some kids, they power nap. So they go to sleep for 20 minutes, and then, hello, here I am. And then they're awake for 2 hours, hello, and then they go to sleep, blah, 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 blah. But usually they'll sleep 3 to 4 hours a day during this time, probably more closer to 3. They may sleep up to 11 hours during the night, tire themselves out with physical activity. I like this idea. Separation anxiety may influence. Okay, so around 12 months, they're going through that cling-on phase, right? So they're Velcroed, so they're just, it's like, and that's when they usually select one parent over the other. It's not necessarily a reflection of either parent. It's just they choose to have one to be Velcroed to. And at that point, yes, you're peeling the child off of your leg and putting them into the bed. And is it going to impact attachment? No, it is not. I cannot overemphasize that particular point. There are opinions out there that you cannot kind of do a more intensive kind of sleep modification for infants kind of under 12 to 18 months. It's this attachment parenting kind of module, whereby the baby is with you 24/7. I won't get into that, but it does influence how difficult bedtimes can sometimes be when they are going through that bit of a separation anxiety. Does it modify what you do? It does not indeed. Nothing I will say to you tonight, including letting the child over 6 months of age cry it out, is going to harm the attachment between you and your child. I've been doing this for 15, 16 years, and typically it's much harder on the parents than it is on the child to do sleep modification. But there has been no studies, no research to indicate that modifying a child's sleep will impact the attachment between the parent and the child. So sleep hygiene, put your baby to bed awake. So this is the prime learning time for learning how to go to sleep on their own and have a simple and consistent bedtime routine. So they may fuss a little bit. When they're under 6 months, are you going to let them cry? No. You don't, I'm tough, but I'm not that tough. Under 6 months, what I try to do with the babies is kind of pick them up, soothe them, put them back into bed. Pick them up, soothe them, put them back into bed. It's a lot of work. But again, it's short-term pain for long-term gain. And, and it's the same thing with infant car seats. I've worked with a few families whereby the only place the child would sleep was the infant car seat. And they said, well, Heather, that's the only place he or she will sleep. I said, well, indeed it is not. But there are ways of fixing that. So really going back, simple routine, bedtime routine. That crib is not a toy box. The crib is a sleeping device or a bassinet. And because it gets harder to modify their sleep as they get older. But if you can start these routines at this point, boy, oh boy, you're well on their way. So 6 to 12 months, this is Miss Sarah. Now, Sarah had a soother for which she was severely devoted to. And her mother asked me, well, should I get rid of the soother, Heather? And I said, if you're going to sleep modify, if you're going to go through the agony of modifying their sleep, get rid of the soother. Because if they're going to cry, might as well get rid of the soother. But Sarah never decided to do that. She recently just graduated from grade 12, and she did very well in high school, and she did give up the soother eventually. But although Ducky is not in the picture, she still has her favorite Ducky that is going to Mount Allison with her. But it's hard. I mean, I looked after her a phenomenal amount of time, and I take her for over the weekends and stuff like that. And it's hard. It's hard to kind of put them to bed, and you hear them cry, and it's just like, oh, what am I doing? And then 5 minutes, 10 minutes later, they're sound asleep, and you think, oh, okay, it's not so bad. And but kind of modifying them at this, kind of establishing the good sleep routines at this age, 6 to 12 months, before they're verbal, is really, really good. Because when they get the verbal ammunition, her brother, I digress with personal stories, but they're usually effective. Her brother was, I think, 22, 24 months, and they went away for the weekend. And Sarah wasn't born yet. And they said, Heather, you do lots of sleep work. Can you get Michael sleeping through the night? The psychologist says, sure, I can do that. And 4 o'clock in the morning, over the intercom comes, Heather, I love you. Heather. I fell for it. Hook, line, sinker, and he was in bed with me. So, but what he taught me was, I can stand up here with all these fancy words and all these nice pictures of kids, but I have to have an appreciation of how hard it is. Michael taught me how hard it is to hear verbal ammunition. I love you, Heather. Or worse, my godson, Sister Eleanor, who chose the exact opposite. I hate you, Heather. I hate you. And it's like, good psychologist, it's a verbal temper tantrum. And it's hard. It's hard. But it's okay. So sleep in toddlers. Need between 12 to 14 hours of sleep in a 24-hour period, usually down to 1 nap by 18 months. And I think that's what most daycares, aim for around that age. Wanting to be independent but still dependent and can create some nighttime struggles. The 2-year-old, I love you. I don't love you. I love you. I like peas. No, I hate peas. I love these jammies. I want these jammies on. And it's a trying time. At this age, they're also mobile. So 2 years of age, a lot of kids are not in the crib anymore. They're in a toddler bed. At that point, you really want them sleeping well through the night because they will run out of their little beds. And then you have to keep walking them back. So it gets more challenging for the parents to modify. Now, I have a picture of the family bed here. I'll be honest with you all and those in telehealth land, I'm not a fan of the family bed. I like kids to have their own sleeping space because it gets harder. You know, at this age you think, yeah, it's not too bad, Heather. You know, it's cool. But then you got to think how hard it gets, as they get older, it gets increasingly more difficult to modify their sleep. All of a sudden they have to get up at 7 o'clock to go to preschool, and it's hard. And the studies show they don't sleep as well when everybody's in the same bed together. But different philosophies on that point. But simple and consistent, a consistent theme in my lecture tonight about bedtime rituals. With this age, it's really nice, especially between 18 and 24 months, to start giving them choices around bedtime, around different aspects of bedtime. So do you want the red pajamas or the blue pajamas? So you're empowering them. You're letting them have a choice, but they're also not going through the chest of drawers, pulling out 5 million different types of pajamas. I choose red. Then you stick with red, because you've got to follow through with their choices. Have a basket of books that are relatively short. They're not love story or the War and Peace or something like that. The little Boynton books are really nice. Good Night Moon, Runaway Bunny. There's lots of board books out there, and so have them choose 3 out of the basket. That makes them feel good when they can choose. They'll probably choose the same one every night, which is really nice. But it's nice if they can have some control over some aspects of their bedtime. And I'm a firm believer, the fancy name for it is transitional object, or the stuffy, or a nice stuffed animal or something. I love that. I love when babies have those things. I think it's really, really nice. I always advocate buying 2, though, because sometimes one gets lost, and terror can strike in the household. Okay. They are verbal and mobile, make the bedroom conducive to sleeping. So no technology in the bedroom. Just no technology in the bedroom. And I say this, if I talk about older kids, no technology in the bedroom. Because those bright screens do impact that ability to kind of get to sleep. And, the Canadian pediatric guidelines would say no more than 2 hours. Kids under the age of 2 should never watch TV. Yeah, that's just not realistic. But these are things I learned when I babysit. That's one of the other things they used to write into my white horse about TV. And then I babysat for a whole weekend and realized there are merits to Treehouse. So it is important, but really kind of keeping the TVs and the iPads and all of that stuff out of the bedroom is a good idea. Okay, toddlers and preschoolers, everyone in the house needs to agree. This can be challenging if one of the parents works shift work. I had one set of parents where the dad didn't get home till 11 o'clock at night, and he wanted to spend time with their child because this is the way the schedules flowed. This was his time. And Mom, who had spent from 6 o'clock in the morning to 11 o'clock at night with said child, was really ready for the child to go to bed at 7. So it becomes a bit of an issue as to whose needs need to go first. And at this age, the children's needs need to come first. And really, I think it's just too hard on the whole family when the kids are going to bed at 9 and 10 and 11 o'clock at night, for the toddlers and preschools in particular. And I know in summertime it's hard because it stays lighter out longer and stuff like that, but really I'm a firm believer in really kind of a nice decent bedtime of 8 o'clock or 7:30, and having that 10 to 11 hour start at that point. Because I think if you drag it out, I really believe that the quality of your own functioning can sometimes go down. And that's really hard because you do need time to yourself. And because you always, always, always love your child with every ounce of your being, but sometimes you need your distance, and you need your space, and you need someone else to kind of, I need to get out tonight. I don't care if I'm just going to Tim Hortons to have a cup of coffee or tea or whatever. And all of this contributes to that. All roads lead to the child's bedroom. So no falling asleep on the couch watching Caillou, right? It's sometimes easier just to let them fall asleep on the couch watching the TV and then tiptoeing them into bed. But again, it just, in the long run, it doesn't work. Keep it short. 40 minutes is on the long side, but 20 to 40 minutes. Keep it calm. No video games, no television, no scary stories. Your child's favorite is the last. So you can kind of keep it nice. For sometimes kind of the 3 to 4-year-old, and sometimes even the kind of 2.5-year-old, what's nice is if you kind of make up visual charts, because kids learn to talk at different ages. So some kids are verbal at 18 months, some kids don't say boo until they're 3. So kind of having a nice visual chart of what's going to happen can give kids that sense of security. In this day and age with digital cameras and everything, it makes it a whole lot easier. So what I like to do and encourage parents to do is take pictures of the different parts of the bedtime routine. So have a picture of, Lucy in the bathtub. Have a picture of Lucy brushing her teeth. Have a picture of Lucy getting on her jammies, laying down in her bed or in a crib by herself, and then kind of posting it on the wall or making a bedtime book. Kids like predictability. They like being a part of it so that they know A, then B, then C, then D. Then that decreases the anxiety about what's going to happen next. Do you have to be consistent every night of the week? No. It's nice. But again, reality. Neighbors are going to come over, so you think you can dance this on Wednesday night, and really you just don't want to do that routine on Wednesday night because of that show. Things happen, and that's okay. If you can be consistent 85 to 90% of the time, you're doing great. Because sometimes you have to go out to an appointment. There may be something at Walmart that you need. Don't beat yourself up if you can't do it all the time. Just do your best. That's all I ask. And as I said, for the older child, they love making up these visual charts. They don't always like following them, but they do enjoy making them up. So these are approximate times of sleep, nighttime and daytime. So it's, of course, when they're little, they're sleeping just as much during the day as they are during the night. And then by the time, they're ready to go to school, they're not sleeping at all during the day. And that's, not kind of like Michael, the little one who said, I love you in the middle of the night, and I couldn't sleep modify him. He was a kid that up until he was 4.5, he needed a nap. And it was really hard getting him ready for school because what we had to do was to slowly take away that nap. So we'd wake him up 5 minutes earlier every day, but it was like a 6-month preparation kind of before he went to school. But most kids, most daycares and the preschool programs, the kids at this age, they may have a quiet period or a circle time, or not circle time, but some kind of quiet period. But most of the time, they're not sleeping. And these are all averages, right? Psychologists, we love numbers, so they're all averages. And, so I know some 2-year-olds that, they only need 10 hours of sleep at night. They're like the Energizer Bunny, and other kids, they need, 12 hours of sleep through the night. But it's really, what are they like during the day? Are they ultra sensitive? My tag is tight. This is it's a tag on your clothing. It's not a big deal. My socks are crooked, I am reliving experiences from 2 weekends ago when I looked after a 6.5-year-old. When his socks were crooked, it was not good. But you just look at how kind of sensitive they are, how well are they going with the routine the next day. Is it taking them an hour to eat their breakfast? Is it just making, those are the types of cues that will tell you if they're getting enough sleep. It's really their functioning during the day. So there was this large infant sleep poll in October of 2005, which I found, again, on the internet. And it was really interesting because they surveyed, it was thousands of people in terms of, kind of looking at sleep. And I think the survey went out with, I think it was sponsored by a diaper company or something. I can't remember the exact details. But it was interesting in the sense of, really how much do they sleep? The average number of hours children slept at night by age. So 12 to 23 months, 10 hours. And it really wasn't that different at 3 or at 4. And but again, it's just fluctuations. There's lots of variance in here. Okay. Amount of time it took children to go to sleep, and these are about in minutes. So kind of 14 minutes, 13 minutes, 14, 18, 19. You look at the 18-minute or the 19-minute. Of a child who's 3 who wants to go to bed and read and flip through the books, I don't have an issue with that. I think that's actually quite lovely because they're going to sleep on their own. So it takes a little bit longer because they're processing their day just as like you and I will. Children's average wake time, so basically it was the same across the board, but again, it varies. When do I get time with my partner? And as you can see, most of these bedtimes are closer to 9 p.m., which is sort of kind of reasonable. I try to aim for 8, but if parents are working till 5:30, 6 o'clock at night, and then they got to get supper, then they got to, they got more than one child in the household, 8 o'clock, Heather, is just not reasonable. So just making it reasonable for your family. So the big question parents get asked but don't want to answer is he or she sleeping through the night? It's a tough question. And what I've learned over the ages is that you will get more advice than you will ever need or want to hear. Have any of you experienced this? If you talk about sleep, that people will kind of say, oh, well, you slept, or, well, I know, yeah, You will be told the only thing that worked for me was, and a story will start, in my day, yes, well, my mother, she's a nurse, and she always warned me. She said, you got to talk common sense to these parents. I said, yes, I'm pretty much about common sense. I said, but Mom, you got to realize that I grew up on carnation formula, like the carnation canned milk with the, I forget what, the corn syrup inside of it and all these other things. I said, some things have changed, Mom. And, but, parents, they will give you advice. When I'm doing any kind of formal sleep modification schedule with parents, I tell them not to tell anybody else what we're doing. Not because, that what I'm doing is wrong or politically incorrect. Well, maybe it is, but it's because I want them to have one person that they trust to help them with their sleep. And that's the whole key. It's just finding someone that you trust to help you. And that could be a relative, could be a friend, or whatever. So what you need to remember, is the sleep schedule working for your family? If you know that you would like to see your baby sleep longer, but you are not ready to modify the sleep pattern, that's okay. I had a set of triplets, and they were born very, very early. I think they were born at 26 weeks. And they were relatively healthy, no major developmental issues at all. And this is the couple's first children. Mom was, yeah, Heather, we need to modify the sleep. I need them to sleep through the night. And they were about, I think, between 9 and 12 months old at the time. Dad wasn't ready. I said, okay. I said, Scott, you call me when you're ready. And the mom's saying, but we want to do it now. I said, it's not going to work now, guys. I said, because Scott's not ready. And I said, unless he's, going away for at least a week, we're not going to do it. So finally, Scott called me when the kids were 18 months old. This was a family where they were literally, the kids, I think, had slept in their cribs once. They were on the living room floor, all on mattresses on the living room floor. It was the only way they could get their kids to sleep. So Scott said, I'm ready. I said, okay, we're ready. And so we implemented a sleep modification program, and it took 2 nights. The kids were going to bed at 7:30 and waking up at 7. And Scott said, you did. I said, I did tell you it would work, but I said you weren't ready. And so that whole readiness factor is key. I said it worked because you were ready. No, that doesn't make sense. So when you get asked, if she is sleeping through the night, you're going to get immediate silence, like, okay, you're not going to understand. Green tinges in the skin of who asked if they're sleeping through the night, and further inquiry, really, they don't want to believe you that their child is sleeping through the night. But how are your child, so important issues to consider before you go out and buy books, how are your child's sleep habits impacting their lives? So really, how are they functioning during the day? Is bedtime miserable? I just worked with a family of a 3-year-old whereby it took 3 hours to get the child to go to sleep at night. Now, he was 3, articulate, wonderful, but everything was a drawn-out process, and so we got it down to the bedtime being very simple. Snack time, 20 minutes, and we set the clock timer. So when that timer went off, snack was gone, snack was it. But Dad said, but he's telling me he's hungry. I said, no, he's not hungry. He had an opportunity to eat. But he wouldn't tell me he was hungry if he wasn't hungry. Yes, indeed, he would. And I'm thirsty. Yes, okay, so you can have a sippy cup of water. That's fine. I need to go potty. I believe in one potty. They can have one potty excuse because you don't, But otherwise, most of the time they're wearing pull-ups or under jams or whatever they're called now. They glow in the dark now. Who's ever going to get the child out of them? They glow in the dark. I tell you, things get so fancy. But really kind of having that strict bedtime routine, and Mom was laying down with him. I said, Mom, no. Just explain to him, we made the picture chart, explain to him what's going to happen, that Mommy's going to leave the room, and da-da-da. Well, the first night, I think he cried 2 hours. And the way I modify sleep is that I do go back, I get the parents to go back at increasingly long intervals, but they do go back so the child knows that the parent hasn't fallen off the face of the earth. I'm not a big believer in having the doors closed, but what I like to do is get like a baby gate. They look very pathetic at the baby gate. And he indeed did, and he did fall asleep at the baby gate. By 3 nights, by the 3rd night, there was no issues. Parents had their lives back. And the parents were able to be a couple. They could go out on a date night. They hadn't had a date night since this little guy was born. And I think that's kind of sad. Because I think really working on that relationship between the couple is important. Because especially if you're the stay-at-home parent, you don't get to talk in sentences through most of the day. You're speaking in 3 or 4 words, or, anyway, you just start talking differently. And you forget how to talk to an adult. And it's just nice to talk about things besides Caillou and, and the wiggles and the waggles and all those things. And, so it's just nice. So how's it affecting? And if, most of the couples, some of the couples I've worked with, the parents are sleeping in different bedrooms. It's not healthy for a relationship or a marriage. And it's not really healthy for the child either in terms of a sleep hygiene. Because you want your child to brush their teeth on their own, you want them to go to potty on their own, you want them to be able to get dressed on their own, tie the shoes on their own. Going to sleep on their own is the same type of principle. So nightmares. Most kids will have nightmares or things that go bump in the night. And, if it's a nightmare, you are going to go in and soothe them. Now, I'm just going to flash ahead. This slide's more important. So nightmares, they can wake up, and they can happen at any age. I find, again, they will happen more during kind of developmental spurts, like if they're just learning how to walk or how to climb stairs, or if they're just starting daycare, or if a new sibling has arrived, or whatever the case may be. It doesn't matter gender. Doesn't seem to be any differences. They occur during REM sleep. With nightmares, they are arousable. So you can actually go in and have a conversation with them if they're having a nightmare. You can actually calm them down and make them feel better. And memory for the event, yeah, some kids will remember the nightmares. Is it brought on by stress? Certainly. And stress, that can be something so simple as, starting a new daycare, a new sibling, different things like that. Night terrors, although when you're in your bedroom, they sound similar, they actually are quite different in the sense that they're really only, the prime time that they occur is between 3 to 8 years. Tends to happen more in males than females during non-REM sleep, but they're not rousable, so you can't have a conversation with them. And you may want to, because they're screaming at the top of their lungs. They're scared, they're just, and it's the best thing you can do is just make sure they're physically safe and just kind of stay in the room while they're having their night terror, and typically they'll just go back to sleep. And they don't tend to have a memory for the event, when because you remember it vividly, but in the morning they don't tend to remember it. So, and as Cohen says, although most nightmares do reflect ongoing emotional conflicts, in most cases neither the nightmares nor the conflicts are abnormal. Rather they're dealing with normal emotional struggles. Like last night, I was on vacation last week, so last night I had a nightmare about starting work, right? It's just like, oh my God, how many referrals are going to be sitting on my desk and different things like that. So it's normal, right? For the most part, Okay, we don't need to know all that. Some kids are sleepwalkers, and what to do, just talk quietly and calmly. They may follow your instructions to go back to bed. If he or she is not upset by being touched, lead them back to the bed. This is when ensure that they are getting enough sleep and on a normal schedule. If their sleepwalking goes unnoticed, put a bell on the door or some kind of thing that will trigger you to know that they're up sleepwalking, making sure that it is a safe environment for them to be kind of walking around in. Getting prepared to deal with the problem. So where do I get help? You come to a lecture on sleep, talk to someone you trust, check out different books at the library to find a style that works for you. We can, depending on what questions you ask me, I will tell you which books I favor. But different questions to think about: what time does your child go to bed? What time do you want your child to go to bed? How does your child go to sleep? What do you have to do to get them to sleep? Where is your child sleeping? Let them know if they sleep in more than one area through the night. So if you're going to get help from somebody, what is your bedtime routine now? When your child cries, how do you respond? And this question becomes one of the things I learned when I started doing this work was not so much asking the parents what happens when the child cries when they're initially going to bed, but the more important question is, what happens when they cry in the middle of the night? What are you doing? That's where the sleep modification takes on a lot of power, because if you go in immediately, now if the child's hurt, that's different, but if they're just kind of crying for the sake of crying, wait a few minutes before you go in. Try to get them to settle back down on their own, because if you go in right away thinking, oh, if I don't get them right away, they're going to fully wake up, then you're reinforcing that getting up through the middle of the night. The other thing to ask is, can you and your partner tolerate hearing your child cry? Because when you come to see me, your child will be crying. Keep a sleep diary for 1 week so you can kind of get an idea of when they actually are sleeping. Things to keep posted on the fridge if you're sleep modifying, or at all times, really. I am a good parent. Babies who sleep more aren't better. I'm not the only parent whose child does not sleep through the night. If I modify my child's sleep, they will not hate me. Independence is a good thing, and your needs are important too. One of the other things I always get parents to do if they're sleep modifying, I get them to put a picture on the fridge of an activity that they're going to do once they finish modifying the child's sleep. So whether it's a print off of the menu from their favorite restaurant, whether it's just a Starbucks advertisement, whether it's a movie, whatever the case may be, this is my motivation to kind of get you through it. So that's kind of the whirling dervish talk of kind of getting your child to sleep through the night. What I'd like to do is kind of open up questions to the telehealth sites and kind of do it that way, and then we'll come back locally, because you guys can have me for as long as you need me. So are there any questions from the outside sites? Am I doing something wrong, Mark?
No.
If anybody would like to talk, you just press the red light on the microphone in front of you.
They all went to sleep. This isn't good. Okay. Locally. Come on, guys. Ask the question.
Locally, we have microphones so they can hear you as well. Just put your hand up and I'll bring it around.
You talked a little bit about behavior when you go in, the dim lights and not talking much. That works very, very well with little tiny ones. I'm wondering if you have any advice about the older child who's at the gate. What's the parent's behavior like when you're trying to modify an older child?
So if the child, so typically what I say, you're guessing the child's around 2 or 3, somewhere in there? Okay. So if I'm modifying the child's sleep for kind of a 2 to 3, and I love the fact that you're knitting. Beautiful. No, please. I knit all the time during lectures. I just want to support you. If the child is waking up and they're at the gate and they're screaming, usually what I typically have is kind of a sleep modification schedule so that the parents are going in at specified intervals to reassure themselves that the child is okay and also to reassure the child. So when you're actually going in and checking on Johnny, you're basically, I can't walk away from the mic, so on, but you just basically go up to the baby gate and say, Mommy and Daddy love you, or Mommy loves you, Daddy loves you, Auntie loves you, but it's bedtime, and away you go. So really you're not doing, because the room should be lit as it would be lit. They might be screaming, whatever, and banging on, and they might be in a sweat and, crying, and if they cry so much that they throw up, then just basically clean them up. Don't do a lot of talking and loving and cuddling, and just put them back in the bed. If you like, although it tends to create a bit more of a diversion, you can kind of open up the baby gate and put them back in the bed. But typically what I recommend is that you just make a quick entrance to the baby gate so they know that you're there and you know that they're fine, and then go back. Eventually, that's what this little fellow was doing that I was telling you about. And for the first night, I think he cried at the gate for 2 hours and fell asleep. And then his parents put him in the bed, and he slept through the night. The next night, he cried in his bed for 45 minutes, and he didn't get out of bed. And then the third night, he went to sleep within 5 minutes. So it's about kind of working your way up towards that, but really minimal intervention. So you don't want to kind of get into a dialogue with your child. You don't want to, are you thirsty? Are you hungry? Are you, if they stooled their diaper, of course, change them. But you're not going to have a dialogue. Again, just change the diaper, get on with it, get in, get out as quickly as possible. So does that answer your question? Perfect.
So when you're talking about the older child, what would be your suggestion for if they get into a habit that would take your attention? Like, for example, I had a 2-year-old who was in the middle of, not even in the middle of potty training, was pretty much done potty training aside from at night, and got into a habit of we would put her to bed, and then 20 minutes later, she was at the gate. I need a new diaper. we'd take her, change her diaper, put her back to bed, and she would sleep. But it didn't matter what we did. Every night it was the same thing, and it didn't matter if we said, okay, we're going to have bathroom time, we're going to, done pajama time, whatever. It was always the same thing because she knew we'd come. Not going to let her sleep.
Yeah, it's the whole diaper thing is and it's a challenging time. And that's where I always allow one potty excuse, and it's different if they stooled, which some kids, for some reason, they can stool on command, some of them. But, for the most part, I think you handled it really well in the sense of just being very almost robot-like, da-da-da, but making it as efficient as possible. I think nowadays with, these underjams and pull-ups are so darn absorbent. Basically, you can, pour a bucket of water in them and they're still pretty dry against the skin. Cloth diapers might be a little bit different, but really I would probably give her kind of one opportunity, and then that's it. If she wants to pee in her diaper, so be it. And it sounds a little cruel, I realize that, but really what happens is, because if you kind of get into playing that game more than once, you're going through a box of diapers, in a night, and it just becomes exhausting. And if and they up the ante. So if you cut out the diaper bit, then they'll say, I'm thirsty, and then my tummy hurts. Now, if, moms and dads know pain cries. They're pretty good at knowing what a difference, but they will keep upping the ante. So really kind of just being as brief and as, non-talkative as you possibly can, and so on. Some kids take off their diapers. They like to get naked. Then duct tape is a very handy thing. Putting their diaper or putting their jammies on backwards is another handy thing. So you come up with little strategies. But basically, kind of with the potty thing, it's difficult, but usually once. And if they are in underwear, then explain to them, really, I see that you're having to get up multiple times during the pee. We're going to put you back in pull-ups during the night. You got to be willing to go through with that, but typically it's short-lived, and they won't get into that pattern.
Our son is 17 months old, and although he doesn't have a problem going to bed, we have a routine established, and he goes to bed fine. He's developed a new tendency where he would wake up from quiet sleep, full on screaming at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. And when you go in to calm him down, like to rub his back, he cling to you like a vampire. And what are the actions we should take? I mean, right now it's got to the point where the only way we can calm him down is to, because full well we have to get up early in the morning too. So you sort of want it to end as quickly as possible. Yeah. So we'll take him out, whether it be rocking him or, soothing him, either, lying, together or whatever, just so he can go to sleep. Yeah. But the habit is developed, and he seems to be doing it on a regular basis at the same time every morning and in the same way. And we're just trying to shake things, just to break that habit, but we just don't know what's the best way.
Because, 18 months is a time huge developmental spurts. Oftentimes they're learning to go from walking to running. They're learning how to climb stairs. They're getting more verbal. All of these things are happening. So it's a big emotional time for them. So what may have started with him kind of waking up with a nightmare and kind of needing you and kind of clinging to you, as you said, has become a habit. So what I would typically do, I don't know all the specifics of your situation, so this is kind of general advice, is that, if you have, like I say, a Friday night, Saturday night, a Sunday night, I say a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, so that you have kind of a weekend coming towards the second and the third night so that you can kind of rest during the day so you don't have to get up in the morning. Because what I would try to do is really start the sleep modification in the middle of the night. So what I would do is maybe start with 10 minutes before you go in to see him. He's going to be screaming, as long as he's safe and he's not in pain or discomfort. But, kind of, at the end of that 10 minutes, go in, don't get near him because, he's going to reach out. and say, we're here, we love you, but it's bedtime, and out you go. Set your clock timer for another 10 minutes, go back in, say, Mommy and Daddy are here, but it's bedtime, and then slowly increase the amount of time that you're waiting to go back in. And what he'll eventually learn, what he should learn how to do, is go back to sleep on his own at that particular time. Because right now, he needs a whole lot of support in the middle of the night. Those 3 o'clock wakenings mean I need to be hugged, I need to be rocked, I need to sleep with Mommy and Daddy, because it becomes anything for peace. At 2 o'clock in the morning, it's anything for peace, because you do have to get up and work in the next morning. So that's why I always, if you're going on vacation, or if you have a period of time when you are going to have 2 or 3 mornings where you don't have to get up quite so early, that you can take a nap during the day or spell one another off. But that's what I would try to see if that would be helpful for him in terms of, parents will ask him, how long can you let him cry? You can let him cry a long time. And I'm talking hours. So usually it doesn't take hours, but it can be. And that's why, they'll sometimes exhaust themselves into going back to sleep. Will he forgive you in the morning? Of course he will. He'll wake up, his hands will be lifting up for you, and he'll have a big smile on his face. And at least that's been my experience. But that's generally what I would do.
Is it normal for them to regress if they were doing that?
Yeah, it all depends on, how the situation was handled in terms of what now happens in terms of supporting that behavior. Like some kids, if they go through a period of illness, and of course, when they're sick, all this stuff goes flying out the window, as it should. Your child's ill. But then it becomes a slippery slope in terms of what you need to do, and kind of getting back on track is really, really hard. The fact that he's going to bed on his own, is he awake when he goes into his crib?
Oh, yes.
Perfect. So the fact that you've got that part licked, fantastic. So the nighttime shouldn't take that long. But, and if it, kind of, and some of the sleep books will talk about that middle of the night waking, but it is normal. I find especially around 18 months, 30 months, those 2 peaks, I really find that they do tend to do that. But if you kind of get on the strict train, then typically it'll diminish. If it doesn't, if you're trying it for more than 4 nights, I would just, check with your doctor to make sure there's nothing abnormal going on. I can't imagine that there would be, but because typically, in my experience modifying sleep, I would say 90% of the time the kids are sleeping well through the night by the 3rd night. So it shouldn't take that long, but you got to be able to stick to it. So pick a time when you and your partner can kind of get some catch-up sleep during the day, but being able to follow through.
Hi, I have a 2-year-old daughter, and I hate to say it, but yes, I co-slept. She has some special needs, and it started at birth. So I've been doing this for 2 solid years, and I need to ask, one of the special needs, she has a lot of anxiety issues, and she, so far to speak to this day, can't comfort herself, to soothe herself at all. She uses rhythmic motions and such, like holding my hand and flicking my fingers, kind of. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And can I mess her up in the head by trying something like this?
I think, when you're dealing with a special needs child, and that may be, like a child with high anxieties, or a child like with a neurological difficulty like cerebral palsy, or a child with autism, or then what I usually try to do, I'm not comfortable kind of giving individual advice in that case because I don't know your daughter's situation, but what I like to recommend is working with the team of individuals that are working with her and kind of getting their advice, because really I find in my experience, parents need to know from the people that are working with the child what's okay. Now, does your child kind of have a team that's with her?
Patty Monahan with the Progress Center is out.
Pardon?
Patty Monahan with the Progress Center. Yeah.
Okay. So then, so you have the the Progress Center for Early Intervention, which is absolutely fabulous.
Yeah.
So what I would do then is sit down with Patty and try to really observe, like during the day, if you can get her substituting some of those self-soothing, kind of that rhythmic type of activities, with something that she can she do those activities kind of on her own, or are the other times that provoke it, or?
She, honestly, when she does it, it's hard to explain. It's only when she's tired and when she's starting to doze. She needs my hand. She doesn't do it with her own. She only does it with my hand.
Right.
And my thumb has to be positioned just so, and she flicks it back and forth until she's out. And when she does any midway in the night, I have to give my thumb back.
Yeah. So I think it's a matter of, and Patty knows me very well, so feel free to have Patty call me, but I'm trying to find something that might substitute.
Okay.
And really, kind of slowly, with a child like that, kind of slowly introducing her to the crib. And will it cause long-term? In my experience, I mean, I have worked with some children, like some of the children I worked with in the follow-up program did have developmental disabilities. So some of them did have like cerebral palsy, or they did have some significant cognitive delays.
It has other issues as well.
Yeah, so really it's kind of working with their developmental age, but it's a bit more gradual process with those children, because you do have to kind of take into account kind of what their environment is. But to answer your question, are you going to mess her up?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
In my opinion, no. Because you've got Patty working with you, and the thing is, you have extra eyes and ears on her in terms of, cause oftentimes, you think, oh my goodness, what did we do? And then, they're going to daycare and they're doing just fine at daycare, or they're doing fine in a play group or something like that. So slowly kind of getting her used to doing some things during the day when she's alert and stuff like that. That's where I would start. And then kind of working into the nighttime routine.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm dealing with really young, like a 2-month-old baby. When they're just starting to doze, there's twins, and the mom seems very concerned that one's going to wake the other one up. And so if she just puts him down, and he looks like he's just going to go back asleep, but he fusses, she picks him up right away. So how long do you recommend letting the child at that age, especially if they're like 95% asleep in your arms, like the transition? She's trying to put them in their beds, because she's got an older child. She can't walk around with babies in her arms all day long. So how do you make that transition?
Certainly when they're 2 months old, you kind of got things going on. You've got twins to begin with, and then you have 2-month-olds who are kind of sleeping at will type of thing. They're just beginning maybe to kind of get into a pattern, but not really. So with twins, typically one twin will sleep better than the other, in my experience. And if you're sleep modifying one, so if you're putting one down and the other one starts to fuss, I would leave the other one fuss for a little bit, and then, just kind of, and then at 2 months, I would probably let them fuss maybe 5 to 10 minutes, maybe that long. And then if they need reassurance and bring them back up, put them down. It's really, really hard. There are certainly times, and that's where, I would probably certainly meet with that mom on an individual basis, because I've certainly modified some of the things I've said in terms of certain circumstances, like say if there's maternal depression, or if there's multiples, or if there's something like that, then sometimes I'll sleep modify a little bit earlier than 6 months, just because of the needs of the family. Has it ever harmed the child psychologically? Not that I'm aware of, because the mother's mental health and well-being overrides kind of that crying for 20 minutes. But really just doing, and if are in separate cribs, or?
They're in separate bassinets.
Yeah.
I just noticed that she was really, really keen to quickly jump if anybody.
No, because I think it's the only way they're going to learn how to self-soothe is really to give them a little bit of experience. Not a whole lot of experience, but a little bit of experience. And it's good for the mothers to kind of see too, well, how do they self-soothe? Is it the thumb? Is it the blanket, or or do they just need to fuss themselves to sleep? So really, and explaining it to mom, like, I can't let them cry. That's wrong. I just can't. That's wrong. It's also lack of a better word, wrong, it's also helpful for them to learn how to do things on their own, so to kind of just, well, let's see what he can actually do. Let's just see what happens. And if you're there supporting her, then I think that really works. Because sometimes you need to literally hold the mom's hand while the baby is fussing, to give her that support to be able to do it. Okay, let's start, and really, clock timers on stoves are my best friends. Let's wait 5 minutes and let's see what happens. And because if you're looking at your wristwatch, 5 minutes will feel like 5 hours. But if you have a clock timer, get her walking to the kitchen, let's make a cup of tea, let's do some, play a game of cards. And if they're both still fussing at 5 minutes, pick them up, reassure them, put them back, and then slowly kind of increasing it that way. But yeah, I think it's a balance at 0 to 6 months in terms of kind of immediately responding, because in the grand scheme of things, I think all these psychologists that came before me, and a lot of them were pediatricians, so they weren't psychologists, but had this grand scheme of this instant bonding, and you got to get your baby as soon as they cry, and really it's not realistic. Working 17 years in an NICU when babies, where the parents didn't have that time on the mom's chest when they were born, it didn't affect attachment. Other things certainly could have along the way, but to me, I don't even like the word bonding because it implies instant, like instant glue. I don't think you love your baby automatically, but I don't think you know your baby automatically. They all have their different wants and wishes and needs. Some babies like to be cuddled, some people don't. And attachment is all about a dance. It's just like, how do you dance with your baby so that, your rhythms become in sync, so you kind of get to know when they kind of need their space, when they don't, when they need to be cuddled, when they need to walk around. Look how happy she is now. And it's about knowing that dance, knowing that rhythm. That's what attachment is about. And attachment is also about teaching your child that you're a secure base. And that's why I think, when parents are with their kids 24/7 and the child never gets to experience you being away, they have not a heck of an idea what to do when you do go away. And it just freaks them right out. But if they get used to Mommy and Daddy go, Mommy and Daddy come back, that's a wonderful thing. What a beautiful gift to give your children. That sense of security that Mommy and Daddy are going to be there no matter what. When I'm sick, when I'm scared, when I'm frightened, they're going to be there. And to me, the two keys to parenting are respect and consistency. You respect your baby. You wouldn't want to go to bed with a wet collar. At least I wouldn't. So you're not going to put your baby to bed with a wet collar. And it's respecting their need for independence. So putting them to bed on their own. So, yeah. Yes. Yes.
I have a almost 10-month-old baby girl, and she was actually sleeping through the night at like 1 week old, which was amazing, but has since not so much. And we've gotten into we've had a lot of movement and stuff like that in the family, so we've had a lot of just get by, created some bad habits. Mm-hmm. So we don't put her down to sleep awake. So what would you recommend? Do you just do all of this right off the bat, or do you have a gradual kind of breaking in? And what would your starting off interval kind of be for that age?
Okay, so for 10 months, the question I would be asking you is, what's the longest you've ever let her cry?
Pretty long time, probably with me there, though. Like, I've never just let her cry out of the room. So with me there, probably an hour. Okay.
So it's that's okay to let her cry. Good for you. No, it's fine. So I think I'm not much of a gradual person because it's hard work. You don't want to torture yourself. But, at the same time, the book I do recommend is Solve Your Child's Sleep Problems by Ferber. Don't anybody get critical on my Dr. Ferber. He does get a bad rap, but he's misunderstood. At 10 months, probably what I would do, given that you have let her cry for an hour, I would probably start the first interval at 5 minutes. And then kind of go 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 10, 10, 10, 15, 15, 15, and for that, and then every 20 minutes till she's asleep. So there is an end point each night, and then you just gradually increase. But the books will kind of go over kind of more specifics, and most of the libraries have it. You can probably even find some really good guidelines online. In terms of, but making sure that most of the things have settled. We all get into patterns of when there's a lot of chaos in the home. It's anything for peace, you know, you're moving, you're starting school, you've got all these things going on. You do what you need to do to survive. But once you start, have a clear starting point, everybody in the household agree, and then move forward. But unless a child does have a lot of anxiety issues and so on like that, I'm not much into kind of sitting by the bed, moving an inch each night. I'm not much into that. Unless there are some mental health issues for the child, I much prefer it make it clean and go. That would be my 2 cents for you.
Kind of stemming from that question, my son is 15 months, and I think it really started getting to a problematic stage when I went back to work and he started daycare. So I would let him co-sleep with me. He would settle, and then maybe a couple of hours after night sleep time, he would then wake up and I would bring him into bed with me. It's got to the point now where, yes, he starts off at night. I maybe once or twice put him to bed when he's been awake. Normally I nurse him to sleep. And then if I'm lucky, he'll sleep from 7:30, 8 o'clock till 11. If I'm not so lucky, maybe 9. And then I nurse him back to sleep, put him down, and normally he wakes up, even if he's in a deep sleep. If I've been rocking him for even half an hour, put him in, he wakes up as soon as even just lifting him up over, he's awake. So I give in, I co-sleep with him, and which I could deal with, but he's now got to the point where he's waking maybe every hour and a half, just to suckle, and then he'll go back to sleep. On a bad night, he could be restless and wiggling for 3 hours. I've got to the point now, a couple of nights, I have been beside myself, and so I've put him in his crib just to see whether we can do the cry out method. He's then vomited after not even 5 minutes, and as soon as he's vomited and I clean him up, he comes back into bed with me and he's out. On occasion, sometimes if I can't put him into his crib because he wakes up, I put him into my bed, and if I'm changing to get into bed, he's fast asleep. So I'm at the point now, do I start trying to get him at 7:30, 8 o'clock into bed when he's semi-awake? Start it there, or do I start?
That's what I would, and probably what I would do is kind of switch up when you're breastfeeding. I mean, it's great that you're still breastfeeding, but what I might do is breastfeeding, so he's had his evening meal, then give him a bath so that he is fully awake. You know that he's well nourished, his tummy's not hungry, and really kind of start, and either, I don't want to give a lot of individual advice, but really in terms of, that's where I would start, is really kind of working on putting him into bed fully awake. If he does throw up, there are some kids that just throw up, clean him up, put him back in the bed. And it's really tough, and that's where, you put the old towels on the floor, you put a really easy onesie on them, flick it off, put it back on, and it's tough when they're vomiters, because it breaks your heart. And but really kind of keeping it nonchalant. But if your goals, depending on what your goals are, then really I would really work on getting him going to sleep awake. So really kind of just switching up the breastfeeding and the bath or something like that, so that he's fully satisfied that way, but that he's fully awake and just trying to do it. And on a weekend or whatever, when you can have a little bit, like if he naps during the day, giving him a little bit of, so you can kind of nap with him. If you're modifying sleep at night, don't worry about naps. Naps will follow. You never have to worry about naps. But that's what I do in terms of just, because really he has really not a whole lot of concept of how to go to sleep on his own, and so that's where I would start.
My name's Jennifer, and I have a 3.5-year-old and a 10-month-old, and my situation is almost word for word what's happening over here. So what I'm wondering then is with the night wakings with the baby, I go in there and I nurse her and I rock her. The second I put her back down, she starts screaming her head off. What are some good strategies for the nighttime wakings where, she's waking everybody up in the house. My 3.5-year-old is just like exhausted all the time now.
Is your 3.5-year-old in the same room as the 10-month-old?
No, she has her own room. But they share a wall, right?
Yeah. Basically, then I would, do you think she needs to be fed through the night?
I don't think it's more, it's the easiest thing to sort of calm her down. Yeah. And whenever I try not to, she sees me and she's just, why aren't you giving me what I want, kind of.
And I think, breastfeeding has so many amazing positive aspects, but sleep is one of the drawbacks in the sense that oftentimes they will fall asleep at the breast, and really it just makes it a little bit more challenging. And that's why kind of switching it up, what I was recommending for her is really kind of playing with that initial bedtime, so that initial 8 o'clock or whatever it may be. So breastfeeding her and then giving her a bath so that she's fully awake and putting her into bed. Because babies, as I told you earlier, will wake up throughout the middle of the night. 99% of the time they don't need to eat, and parents say, well, she'll drink. I mean, the families I've dealt with who have bottle fed their children, they were giving their babies 24 and 48 ounces through the night. And it's just like, no, you don't. But they must be hungry. They're eating. I said, no, not really. They'll make up the volume during the day if they need to. And so that's where I would start. And, if you want to get me afterwards, we can talk about some more specific individual things. But that's where I would start, is really playing with that initial bedtime, having them fully awake, and so on, so that everybody kind of in the household, because at 10 months you really would expect her or him to be able to go to bed and stay, be non-disruptive to the family throughout the night.
Yes, there was 2 nights this week where she was up every hour and a half, every 2 hours. And then, I don't know, the next night, I slept great last night, and I don't know if I'm just sleeping through her because I'm so tired. Yeah. But, so that seems to be our cycle in our house is, every couple of days.
Well, and it's almost worse that way, because then it's just like, oh, is this the night? Am I going to get to sleep? Am I not going to get to sleep? Is she going to wake up? Is she not going to wake up? And it's really, really hard. But typically, as I said, in my experience, if you get a book like, I do like the Ferber book, Solve Your Child's Sleep Problem, the 2nd edition, because it lays out a very specific plan. And as I said, he's gotten a bad rap, but basically what I really like about him and what people don't recognize is that you are going back in at different intervals to reassure the child and reassure yourself more than anything that they're okay. You're just not picking them up and giving them a lot of comfort. The other key is if you're modifying through the night in particular, is waiting a certain amount of time before you go in. When you have another child, it makes it harder because you're going to disrupt their sleep. But typically, again, if you get 2 or 3 nights of pure torture, but then they're sleeping through the night, then everybody kind of rebounds to the positive. So I think I'll take one more question, and then we'll shut it down. My telehealth sites have gone. Oh, okay.
Hi, we have a 4-year-old son, and I find he's regressed a bit since our infant years when born. And he's difficult to get down and wakes through the night, and he has a fear now of ghosts. And so he wants the lights on, he wants us to come in the room to reassure him, and it's been a really big challenge for us for the past month or so. And he screams so much, maybe sometimes 2-3 hours a night. Now that's the point where he has lost his voice completely from screaming so much. So we do try to sit with him and slowly walk out of the room. And we've also tried to lay with him. Nothing seems to work. So we're kind of
and some kids take longer than others to adjust to a new sibling. And what can sometimes help in that case is, because sometimes their anxieties are not so much, they articulate that it's ghosts, but it's really, is Mommy and Daddy going to be there for me as much, because now I have this new sister who's just like, And what I find sometimes works is to, are you home with him during the day, or?
He goes to daycare 3 times a week.
Okay.
Yeah.
So on those, on those other days that he's not at daycare, what I try doing is having what's called a date with him. So getting a calendar on the fridge and going to the dollar store, we're going to get some date stickers. And you are going to have a mommy date and a daddy date or whatever. And so you're having special date stickers, and so that you'll have 20 minutes of just one-on-one time with him at some specific time that works well for your schedule. That she is not even in the room. If she's screaming in the next room, so be it. She's going to scream for 20 minutes because this is his time. Oftentimes, once they realize that she's not kind of monopolizing Mommy and Daddy, because they do, she's young, that's what she needs, then they begin to settle down. I think kind of having pictures of the bedtime routine for a little guy like that, I think would be really helpful in terms of having him participate in the process. Knowing that, and then if he does, I'm not a big fan of sticker charts, but in that case it might be, wow, you laid down on your bed for 5 minutes without crying. I am so proud of you. And, you kind of get a sticker type of thing. So really building up on the strengths that he has. And hopefully then with time, that once he kind of gets some of these Mommy and Daddy dates, that could just be a walk around the house. It could be nothing fancy, but label it a date so that he knows he has your one-on-one time, that she's not part of the picture. And I think sometimes that can just help to kind of give them that extra little bit of reassurance that, Mommy and Daddy, I still have my date night. And date night is, no matter how horrible they've been all day, dates never get interfered with. It's just one of those things that's just a solid part of their little lives. And also sometimes what I find helpful is, let's make up a special Mommy and Daddy blanket for you. So let's, pick up some old clothes that you're not going to wear anymore, and let's cut them up and make you a special Mommy and Daddy blanket, because we know that you miss us in the middle of the night. So we're going to make you up something that smells like you, that's part of your clothing, so again, that they have something tactile that they can hold on to in the middle of the night. Sometimes what I get parents to do is actually, especially moms, get some lipstick on and put a kiss on a handkerchief. And so here's a kiss for Mommy for those middle of the night when you get up and you're kind of scared and you're kind of worried. Here's a Mommy kiss for you that you can have with you all the time. And they can even tuck it into their pockets to go to daycare with. So some of those things can sometimes help to kind of settle it out. Well, I want to thank you all for coming, young and old alike. I like the younger participants in particular. So thank you.